And I used to be caught in this trap. Too many churches are looking for decisions. Jesus is looking for disciples. And there's a big difference. Because we've got churches today, in my opinion, that are filled with people who have made decisions, some type of decision, but they've really not become true disciples. Well, one Bible scholar put it this way: it is possible to claim to be a follower of Jesus without being a disciple, to be a camp follower without being a soldier of the King, to be a hanger-on in some great work without pulling one's weight. Someone was once talking to a great scholar about a younger man. He said, "So-and-so tells me that he was one of your students," and the teacher answered devastatingly, "He may have attended my lectures, he was not one of my students." There is a world of difference between attending a lecture and being a student. It is one of the supreme handicaps of the church that in the church there are so many distant followers of Jesus and so few real disciples. Let me put it to you another way. We've got a world outside that looks at those of us who come here and sit on the inside, and here's what I think a lot of them think. They see people who have been regularly exposed to small doses of watered-down religion, and they've been inoculated against genuine, real Christianity. And so they look at us and they mistake Christianity for this watered-down version of quote-unquote religion, of showing up at church once in a while, and they basically say, if that's what Christianity has to offer, I've got better things to do with my life. If that's all Christianity has to offer, I've really got better things to do with my time. And what I want us to learn today is real simple. Jesus is not looking for weekend warriors. He's not looking for people that just, when they feel like it, when they're not going to the lake, when it's not raining, they'll show up every once in a while to a National Guard meeting. Jesus is looking for full-time, everyday, Sunday through Sunday spiritual Marines. Now, if you brought a copy of God's Word, I want you to turn to the third Gospel, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. I want you to turn to the Gospel of Luke, the 9th chapter. And while you're turning, Jesus tells us in one of the strongest challenges he ever gave to anyone what it really means to be all in. Now, before I get started in this, let me tell you something that I really, really, really believe with all of my heart. I tell young pastors this. I'm going to tell you something I think is not only ultimate hypocrisy, the ultimate hypocrisy, I think it's a fireable offense. I think it is the ultimate hypocrisy and a fireable offense for a pastor to ask his people to do something that he's not willing to do and do more than he's asking them to do. I think I'd be a hypocrite if I said to you, I think everybody ought to tithe, and I didn't give more than a tithe of my income to the work of God. I think that'd be hypocritical. I think I'd be hypocritical if I said to you, you ought to read your Bible every day, and I didn't read my Bible every day and read more of it than you do. I think it's hypocritical if I say to you, I think you ought to share your faith with other people, and I never share mine, and really don't try to share it at every chance that I get. So I really believe that when it comes to a pastor asking his people to do something, the first thing that pastor better make sure of is, hey, I'm not asking my people to do something I don't do and not even try to do more of. I try to set the highest bar. God is no different. Yes, God asked us to be all in, but you need to understand that when God sent Jesus Christ, He went all in. When Jesus Christ died on the cross for our sins, even though He didn't have to, He went all in. And the same God that sent Jesus and the same Jesus that died says to us, I want you to be all in. I am a wholehearted Lord. I'm not looking for half-hearted followers. I'm looking for people who are all in. I'm looking for people who every day of their life get out of bed, look me in the eye and say, Lord Jesus, just for today, I'm betting the ranch. I'm going all in. In every area of my life, I want you and you alone to be in charge. I'm cashing everything in. This is what I want you to take out the door this morning. This is the whole point of what I'm going to say today. Matter of fact, it's really what I'm going to say the entire series. Jesus, who gave His all for us, wants us to give our all to Him. Jesus, who gave His all for us, wants us to give our all to Him. Now, if you look in Luke chapter 9 in verse 23, as we look in the mirror, Jesus says to His disciples then, just like He says to His disciples now, if you want to be a disciple, there's three things you've got to do if you're going to be all in. Real simple, super, super simple. Number one, you've got to deny yourself. Now, every time I read the first two words of Luke 9:23, it blows my mind. I never read these two words and I go, it's the only time I think I've ever read Jesus say something, and I wanted to do what Peter did. You know, Peter on occasion would try to correct Jesus. Matter of fact, the only time Peter opened his mouth most of the time was to change feet. And you know, he was always in this habit of trying to correct Jesus and tell Jesus where he was wrong. Well, if there's any time Jesus says something and I want to really correct him, it's here, because listen to these first two words. If anyone would come after me. You know why that blows my mind? Because every time I read those words, I want to say, Jesus, what do you mean, if anyone? Don't you really mean since everyone would come after me? Because I would think if there's any person who's ever set foot on this planet that everybody would want to follow, it would be Jesus. I mean, if Jesus is who he said he was and did what he said he did, you would think, well, everybody wants to follow Jesus. And I have to be very honest. I still find it incredible that there are people that don't want to follow Jesus. It never fails to blow my mind when I talk to an unbeliever and I tell them everything that Jesus Christ is trying to offer them absolutely free of charge, and they say, not interested. It blows me away. Are you kidding me? I mean, you're talking about a blue light special. Listen, you don't want what's behind curtain number 2? You got to be joking. You're never going to get a better deal. Nope, really not interested. It just hards me to get around the reality that not only that people don't follow Jesus, what's even harder is most people are not going to follow Jesus. Because I've got news for you. Most people don't follow Jesus in this lifetime. And Jesus even said that would happen. Now, you got to give Jesus credit for one thing. I mean, at least he doesn't force anybody to follow him. He doesn't coerce anybody to follow him. He only wants you to follow him if you want to follow him. He's not going to push you. He's not going to shove you. He's not going to pour himself on you. You've got to decide that you want to follow him. Now, the other side of that really encourages me is this. I also know, because of what Jesus said, when he said, if you want to, you don't have to, but if you want to, it tells me that I can stand up anywhere, anytime, in any place, and I can say to anybody, if you want to follow Jesus Christ, you can follow Jesus Christ. I don't care what your past is. Go back to the last series. I don't care what baggage you're bringing with you. If you want to follow Jesus Christ, you can follow Jesus Christ. Now, not everybody will become a follower of Jesus, but Jesus will accept anybody. You know, in all of my ministry, I've never met a person yet that wanted to follow Jesus but couldn't follow Jesus. I've met people that could have but didn't want to. I've never met anybody that wanted to but simply couldn't, because Jesus will accept anybody. And you say, well, Pastor, I've got a good question then. Why don't people follow Jesus? Well, why don't they really, get behind him? Why don't they give him their life? And I think Jesus answers the question for us. Keep reading. If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself. Because see, this is where discipleship gets demanding, and this is where following Jesus gets messy. Because Jesus said, there's not enough room for both of us here. It's either all me and none of you, or it's all of me, all of you and none of me. So you got to make a choice. There is a cost to following me. You've got to deny yourself, which is the hardest thing you ask anybody to do. See, it's easy to deny things. It's easy to deny pleasures. It's easy to deny other people. We do it all the time. But it's another thing when you say, I'm going to deny me. Now, I want to clarify something. Denying self is not the same as self-denial. I mean, everybody practices self-denial. Some of you will go out to eat today. And you know what you'll do? Even though you want that chocolate pie, even you want that apple pie, even though you want that milkshake, you're not going to eat it. You know why? Because you're on a diet. You know what a diet is? A diet is a practice of self-denial where you try to imitate what it's like to be in hell. That's really what a diet is. You know, and I've been there. I've been on diets myself. I know. I'm with you. And it's misery when you go to a Christmas party and you know I can't afford it. I cannot put on another pound. And everybody else is eating the strawberry cake, and everybody else is eating the strawberries dipped in chocolate. But you can't do that because you're practicing self-denial. That is not what Jesus is talking about. Self-denial is not the same as denying self. Denying self is when you cash everything in, you take everything you are, everything you have, everything you ever hope to be, everything you ever hope to get, every place you ever hope to go, everything you ever hope to attain, and you say, Lord, I'm putting it all on you. I'm surrendering everything to you. I want to become a complete follower of you. And the problem with that is we are living in the wealthiest, most materialistic society in the world that tells us just the opposite. It goes against the grain of everything you see, everything you hear on the internet, the radio, and the TV, because here's what you're being told constantly. Don't deny yourself, deify yourself. glorify yourself, edify yourself, advertise yourself, eulogize yourself, admire yourself, esteem yourself. Matter of fact, I'm going to make a very candid confession to you today. I'm going to reveal to you for the first time the church member that gives me the most problem. And I don't mind telling you, I'm embarrassed to tell you, but I'm really embarrassed for him, because this church member is my biggest headache. And I hate to call this guy out because I like the guy. I mean, he's one of the best people I know. I love being around him. If you got around him and got to know him, you'd love him too. Matter of fact, I can't even get away from him, because the church member gives me the most problem is me. I'm the guy that gives me the biggest headache. Because I'm always constantly have to saying to myself, James, you need to get out of the way so Jesus can have his way. You need to deny yourself. And I'm just going to ask a question. How many of us in this room right now are honest enough to say, I'm going to serve Jesus, I'm going to obey Jesus, I'm going to follow Jesus, I'm going to honor Jesus as long as it doesn't tell me to pay too much, as long as it doesn't tell me to go too far, and as long as it doesn't take me out of my comfort zone. And Jesus said, no, if you're going to follow me, you got to deny yourself. You got to put me above you, before you, ahead of you, and instead of you. You've got to get your life to the point where you say, from now on, it's all of you and it's none of me. Now, that's hard enough. And I'm going to be honest. If I had been Jesus' personal advisor, I would have kind of stepped up to him right then and I would have said, just leave it alone. I mean, let's have somebody follow us. Okay, let's just kind of leave it right there. Just don't go any further. What does he do? He says, oh, no. I'm just getting started. Because then he says, let's go to another level. I not only want you to deny yourself, I want you to die to yourself. He says in verse 23, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily. Now that doesn't translate to us very well today. Because you have to remember, the cross back in that day was a symbol of death. We don't see anybody carrying a cross anymore. Back in the day, when you were being crucified, when you'd been given the death penalty, you had to carry your own cross to where you were going to be nailed and where you were going to die. Today, Jesus would have more said it something like this. I want you to take up the electric chair daily. I want you to take up the gas chamber daily. Because if you were walking down the road 2,000 years ago, if you ever saw somebody carrying a cross, they were not going to a party. They were going to die. Unlike today where we hang crosses around our necks, back then you hung on a cross until you died. And what Jesus is saying is, you've got to take up my cross in your life. You've got to have a funeral. Every morning when you get up, he says, do this daily. Every morning when you get up, you take your ego, your desires, your ambitions, your goals, you put all of them in a casket, you close the top, and you bury it. Because if you're going to follow Jesus, you got to go to your own personal cross, and you've got to die to yourself. Now, before you think that's too high of a price to pay, let me remind you that all Jesus is asking of us is simply to do for him what he's already done for us. As a matter of fact, it's very interesting to notice what Jesus said in the 2 verses prior to verse 23, because he puts all this in context. Here's what he had just said. And he strictly charged and commanded them to tell this to no one, saying, the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and scribes and be killed. And on the third day, be raised. And simply put, Jesus died for us, and now he asks us to die with him. Now, understand what he was saying. He wasn't asking us to die for him. We can't die for him. We have sins. He didn't have sin. What he says is, look, you can't die for me, but you can die to you. And when we die to ourselves, only then can we live for him. And by the way, that's what he meant in verse 24 when he said this. Whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will save it. Now that's kind of interesting. Jesus said every day you have a choice with your life. You can use it on your own. You can keep it for your own. You can do with it what you want to do with it. You can give it to me. He said, now here's the deal. If you live your life for you and you alone, you're eventually going to lose it. But if you give all of your life to me, you're going to gain it for all eternity. It comes down to two choices. You can either keep your life for yourself and eventually lose it, or you can lose your life to Jesus and eternally keep it. To modernize it, what he's saying is this. If you keep your life in your pocket and you don't put all of it on the table, you're going to lose the bet anyway. But if you empty your pockets and you go all in, you're going to win the entire pot. Jesus said, it's only when you deny yourself and die to yourself that you're really ready to follow me, because it's only when you deny yourself and die to yourself that you're willing to take the last step to following Jesus, which is devote yourself. Now listen to what he says in verse 23. If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross daily, and follow me. Now that word follow is a really interesting word. It doesn't just mean to walk behind somebody. That's what you think it means. That's not what it means. It actually comes from two words. One word means way or path, and the other word means like or same. And what it literally means is you walk in the same way, you take the same road. And the idea is not that you're following so much behind somebody. The idea is you're walking right beside them. And so you're so close to them, when they turn, you turn. When they go straight, you go straight. When they go north, you go north. They go east, you go east. You're just that close. And what you're doing is you are submitting yourself totally to the authority of that person. Now, when you do that, and this is what's hard, because we're told today you can't do this, but this is what you got to do. You got to give up all of your rights. Because a dead person has no rights. If you die to yourself, you have no rights. You give them all up. You give up all of your freedom. You give up all of your desires, all of your wants, all of your ambitions. You say, look, I'm surrendering everything to you, because this is the hard part. The only way, what Jesus is really saying is this: the only way you can become a real follower of me is through complete surrender. And that's why a lot of people check out, because surrender is a very unpopular word. Have you ever thought about the fact that surrender is almost always used negatively? It implies losing, and nobody wants to be a loser. I mean, when you think about surrender, you think about being defeated in a battle. You think about having to give up to someone that's stronger than you are, having to forfeit a game. I mean, almost every time you read the word surrender, it's in a negative context. And if you think about it, our culture teaches the opposite. Leadership gurus tell you the opposite. Never give up. Never give in. Winning is everything. Losing is nothing. Don't you ever surrender. And then Jesus comes along and makes an amazing statement. He says the only way to victory in the Christian life is surrender. One of my heroes, Douglas MacArthur, famously said, in war, there's no substitute for victory. Jesus comes along and says, in life, there's no substitute for surrender. You win. Listen, you ready for this? The way you win with Jesus is lose. The way you get is you give. Totally opposite. Give it all up. Deny yourself, die to yourself, devote yourself. You know, I've told you many times, Jesus, one of the things I love about Jesus, he's always a bottom line guy. I majored in accounting. I understand the bottom line. And Jesus said, the bottom line of your life is very simple. Every one of you in this room, I want you to imagine, based on your life expectancy, how much longer life do you have? If you just live to be the average age of a man or the average age of a woman, how much longer would you have lived? Now, take whatever those years are. Some of you it's 20, 30, 40, whatever it is. Ever how many years you've got, you're going to do one of two things with the rest of your life. One of two. You're going to waste your life by trying to hold on to it, or you're going to invest your life by surrendering it to Jesus Christ. Here's what Jesus said. If you try to hold on to it, you're going to lose it. But if you lose it, you'll gain it. Jim Elliot, the great missionary who gave his life trying to spread the gospel to the Auca Indians in South America, famously said, "He is no fool who gives what he cannot keep to gain what he cannot lose." You're here today and you say, "I am a follower of Jesus Christ." Okay. Simple question. Are you all in? Is there anything stuck in your pocket? Anything held back? Or are you all in? Have you bet the ranch on Jesus Christ? Let me get real specific. When it comes to your church, are you all in? Are you active in the church where you attend? Are you serving in the church where you attend? Are you faithful to the church where you attend? Are you financially supporting the church where you attend? Are you all in? Hey, how about this? How about your marriage? When it comes to your marriage, are you all in? Have you bet the ranch? Do you need to go home maybe today after church and look your spouse in the eye and say, "I just want you to know I'm all in. No matter what happens, no matter what we may face, I'm telling you it's going to be till death do us part." Hey, how about this? Let's just take the real example. Are you all in with your money? Do you ever put any chips on the table when it comes to financially supporting this church? When it comes to financially supporting and giving to God's work? Hey, you're single today. You're not married. Are you all in? When it comes to your sexual purity and your holiness, when it comes to living for God, when it comes to doing the right thing, when it comes to making sure you don't go where you shouldn't go and you don't do what you shouldn't do and you don't maybe see or hear what you shouldn't, are you all in? Hey, how about you? You have a job. Are you all in your work? Are you the kind of employee that your boss would look at and say, "If that's the way every follower of Christ works, I wish everybody in my company was a follower of Christ"? So it's a fair question. Are you all in? So you may remember when you were in school studying about an explorer by the name of Hernando Cortez. If you don't remember it, if you never studied it, it's a great story to close on. He was from Spain. And in 1519, he came to Mexico and he landed at Veracruz, and he was given the task of doing one thing. He had one assignment. He was to go in and conquer the land and build a Spanish colony. Well, you may not have heard the story, may have forgotten it, but he did an amazing thing that's so amazing, we still talk about it 500 years later. When all of his men got off the boat and got on shore there in Mexico, can anybody tell me what Cortez did? He burned the boats. And the soldiers are looking like, "What are you doing?" This was back before, United and Delta and all of that. I mean, and he didn't say a word till the boats burned and sank.